You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is July 5th, 2022, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined today, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine Tuesday?
Spencer, hello. I'm doing well. We're recording on a Tuesday. What's going on? Anything can happen anymore. But yeah, I'm doing well. It's been a busy week IRL with summer stuff kind of kicking off and the holiday and everything. So I'm a little wiped out. I definitely wasn't relaxing over my holiday weekend, but I'm here. I'm ready to talk some WoW. Man, it was a big week for news and fingers crossed it's going to be an exciting week for Dragonflight stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect that we see Alpha imminently. I was kind of expecting that we might have seen the announcement today. We had slightly extended maintenance, and I was like, oh, this might be them getting the login servers ready for the Alpha. That must be what they're doing for that extra hour. But I don't know. We haven't seen anything yet, so maybe it was, and maybe it just hasn't, gone live yet. Who knows? Well,
it seems like it has to be this week, right? I figured it would have been any week except for last week over the last, month or so.
Yeah.
And now that we're on the other side of the holiday in the States, I don't know. It just seems reasonable. We got 5 months left in the year. They want to ship it this year. It seems like they want to ship it maybe not exactly at the complete and total end of the year. So I assume that public tests are going to be going out soon.
Yeah, I would expect that we see announcements this week, either of people who've gotten access to it or of what they're planning to do with it. We also got a lot of other stuff to talk about in the show, so let's dive into what we did this past week so we can jump into what's going on this week, because there's so much to talk about. All right, so this past week for me, not a whole lot going on in World of Warcraft. It was like our last week off. Myself and another healer for sure were out, and some other people were still taking some time with other stuff going on. I actually hopped in and did some LFR because I wanted to guarantee I could get my socket for the week. So I did 5 bosses in LFR, and then I did 1 Mythic Plus dungeon. And that got me my 3 reward boxes, which got me my 6 tokens, so I could put a socket in my neck. And now I'm just missing sockets in my rings, and there's going to be, I think, 3 or 4 rings that I end up wanting to socket. But there are rings out of the raid that are a bigger upgrade than the ones I'm wearing, so I did them last. I did my helm first with my tier helm, and then I went on to do my other piece of the belt that made sense and the bracers that made sense, and now obviously the neck. So now it'll be the rings next, and we'll get that all crossed off the list. But this past week in WoW, the LFR thing was an interesting experience because bosses like the Jailer are very different. Like, I know they're different on normal, but it's even more different on LFR. On LFR, you get Defile, and you get it in phase 2 and 3. It's really weird. It's very weird.
Defile seems like a bad mechanic for LFR, and having more of it seems even worse.
It can only spawn 2 puddles at a time, so when the 3rd puddle spawns, the first one that came out despawns. And
that's good.
It grows very slowly. Like, I saw people stand in it and then move out of it very slowly, and it wasn't like oh no, it's going to overwhelm us kind of thing. I actually didn't really notice it growing at all, so I don't even know if it grows at all, but no one was like planted in it, so everyone knew at least well enough to get out. It's funny because in the first, I would say, minute of the fight, you filter out everyone who doesn't know what they're doing. They all die because they all get mind controlled. That's what happens. So they all get mind controlled for not line of sighting. Everyone kills the 7 or 8 people who have no idea what they're doing, and then you kill Jailer, and those people will continue not knowing what they're doing. And that's just a normal. I assume that's the normal process of this LFR.
Just fact of life. Yeah, it's just a battle of attrition there on LFR Jailer, I guess. I don't think I've ever done Jailer on LFR. So I just was, when I was doing it on some of my alts, I was just focusing on the 2 wings that were like mostly tier bosses, or I guess it's really just one. Like the Anduin wing is the one I would normally do. I don't think I ever actually did LFR Jailer. Yeah,
I did the first wing because that's 4 bosses. As 4 pretty simple bosses, obviously more trash, so you'd factor in time commitment to killing trash versus just doing the bosses of like the Anduin wing. And then did Jailer, and that's 5, right? So that gets you your double box for the week, which is nice. The other bosses, I mean, just that they basically just feel like very long fights because people's DPS is very low because it's LFR, and people aren't really paying attention or don't really know what they're doing or they aren't very geared. And so you sort of are like that, okay, the boss is about to die, and you look up and you're like, the boss is at 40% hit points. Okay, we have like another 3 minutes of this to go. Let's go.
Right.
But outside of that, I mean, there was no massive struggles, nothing that seemed super complicated. It was just odd to see the jailer fight be so different on LFR than it is on normal, than it is on heroic, than it is on mythic. Like it's a very different fight on all of those difficulties. I remember when we did our achievement run, we did it, of course, on normal, and it was a similar thing. Of normal, you're like expecting certain mechanics to happen or certain things to happen, and like there's no knockback from his, hammer slam, and you're like, this is weird. Why is there? I see the slam, I see the circle, I expect it's not there, doesn't exist. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of things that change on that fight, and I think that probably also adds to some of its difficulty for players because I can't picture going from LFR jailer where you get these defiles to normal jailer where the defile doesn't exist. It's just not a mechanic. And you're like, oh, okay. Why does that mechanic just not exist? It's like Rygalon with the downstairs phase. When you go downstairs on Rygalon on normal, you get the lines across the floor. You don't get the orbs that you have to stand on and blow up.
No, yeah, the intermission's really weird on normal. It's like there's really nothing happening. It's like, what are we doing? Why are we even down here?
Exactly. Like it's a very different thing. Of transition from that one difficulty to the next is not as telegraphed as it has been in other raids. As to, we're going to give you the fight and this slowly either apply more pressure by buffing the mechanics that you're experiencing, or not have a mechanic included that is included on a higher difficulty. So going up a difficulty is like, do this fight, but with these 2 other things to pay attention to. In this case, they're like, no, we're going to give you 5 things to pay attention to, but there are different 5 things to pay attention to than on the next difficulty up. And you're like, wait, what? Why?
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. So anyways.
I do think the fight's mostly I think LFR is a pretty decent experience in Sepulchre, but it is some of the way things change it just seems weird.
It's just odd. It's just odd decisions, but it is what it is. Anyways, that was a chunk of my WoW experience this past week, was being like, I'll do an LFR while I watch a movie. I'll just be healing in the background and crank out some numbers and get through it all. And that's what I did. So I did that, and then I did a 15 necrotic wake and knocked that out, no problem. And that was my M+ for the week too. So, yeah. Outside of that, there's been a lot of... actually, how about your raid stuff? We'll stick on raid topic. How was your raid stuff last week?
It was really light. We only really technically had 1 raid night last week. Tuesday, we got through Anduin in about 2 hours flat, which was nice. That's actually pretty good considering how big the place is. But I was out Wednesday. I had something going on, and then Sunday I tried to field a team, but we had a real skeleton crew, and we just couldn't get anywhere. I only had 1 main spec healer, so that made it kind of difficult even to run an 11 or 12 man team. So Sunday was a bust, and that was about it. Really, not much else going on with the raid. But this week I think I don't know. I might miss 1 more day of raiding this month, but I'm going to be on a more consistent schedule, I think, for the next few weeks. So. That should help. It seems like if I'm not going to be around, a lot of times people are like, well, I'm just going to take tonight off too. And then it kind of snowballs, and then people end up taking the rest of the week off. So I don't know. But I think people will be a bit energized to raid here, this week and for the next few weeks, hopefully. So that should be good. And to go along with that, I only got 1 dungeon done last week. I think I did a 20 necro, which was very accommodating. It was a great week. I would have liked to have done more dungeons, but I didn't put the playtime in, and I didn't have the personnel. When I was playing, I didn't have the people around to do stuff with. So that's all it was, which is kind of a bummer because it was a great week to do dungeons. But I don't know, just other stuff going on, and that's kind of how it ended up. So hopefully we'll get a little bit back onto a more normal schedule over the next few weeks here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for us popping back into a more regular schedule because, like I said, we start raiding back up this week. I think we have 3 or 4 apps right now that we're going to be dealing with. Some of them are horde-based, so we're really embracing the cross-faction thing, which I kind of wanted to talk about a bit here at the top of the show. Of cross-faction is very much present in my raid team. I almost feel like we're getting close to that 50% horde thing, which is kind of weird. Oh, wow. We have to use communities even to form groups together. You either have to have everyone BattleNet friended, or you have to use communities to be able to actually create groups and do M+ and do that kind of stuff together. And it's also meaning that I assume in raid itself, it's going to make for some shenanigans with how many people need to be inside a raid group to constitute a guild group to be able to do things. That's going to start coming up for us.
Yeah, if you have that kind of a split, yeah, absolutely.
Well, right now I know it's at least 3 melee DPS, one of our tanks, one of our healers, and then I don't know how many ranged, but there's at least like 3 or 4 ranged. They're doing it too. So like we do have a fairly hefty roster of Horde players versus Alliance players happening, and I think it's going to be spicy going into the next expansion unless we actually have some more information as to what they're doing with what constitutes a guild kill and a guild group, and whether there's cross-faction guilds and some sort of cross-faction chat that's better than, or experience at least, that's better than the community stuff. Leveling together, we usually like to do leveling groups. That won't really be a thing because you can't really do that with Horde players. So like, there's just a lot of going to be very interesting, weird kind of stuff going on with that. So I'll be interested to see how that pans out going forward. But it certainly piqued my like frustration level when I'm like, oh, I have to use communities on a regular basis now for everything. Like for me to join raid, I have to whisper our tank, and our tank is Horde side, so I have to do that via communities, and it's just like, this is just not what I want to be doing at the moment.
It stinks. It's a big logistical problem. I mean, I have a few Horde players that are running with us at this point. I had like 1 or 2 guys switch, and then we got a couple recruits from a guild that was kind of falling apart on our server who wanted to find some other people to raid with. So I've been bringing them, and like even with a small handful of cross-faction people, it's just like I got to scroll through all these different panes of, UI stuff and figure out who is online and invite them. And then you got to make sure you manually add the community chat channels that you want to each character's chat windows. And, my trusty auto invite tools don't work because they don't work for guildies. And yeah, I mean, when communities came out, we were like, well, this has potential, but it kind of stinks. And they haven't really made it any better. And now, like, this entire feature revolves around communities, and it's not great. So I'm hoping that maybe they tidy that up or expand the functionality of it somehow. Or, yeah, maybe if they can just, crack the cross-faction guilds thing in a timely way, and then everybody can just be in the guild, and then all this stuff will go away. That would be nice. Because, as somebody trying to organize a group, it's a real headache to have people on, different.
We can't trade each other's stuff. Like, so, like, if someone needs consumables or whatever it is, like that doesn't work. I assume you're good to go with like cauldrons. I haven't tried it yet, obviously, with dropping cauldron stuff. That's probably fine, but I don't know. It's just it's creating a logistical headache at the moment that feels frustrating. So I'm hoping that gets resolved. I'm a fan of cross-faction. I'm not a fan of how they've implemented it. That's really what it is. I'm a fan of the idea of it. I just wish it was better.
Yeah, the idea is fine. The implementation is very half-baked, in my opinion, right now, and it's just one more pain point for me to assemble a group and organize it and keep it running.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to cover top of the show for me was also, I guess I'll mention this too. Alliance Hall of Fame is closed. For anyone who was curious, it just closed. Got 100 people in it. Closed on Sunday, I think, is when they basically announced it was going to be last reset. So if you were someone who was hoping to get that Hall of Fame title on Alliance side, that is now closed. So I hope you got in when you wanted to. That was something I was glad to get. I actually was sort of going through all my titles, and I have all of them, including the Sylvanas one, which I thought was funny because I guess I still killed Sylvanas before 100 Alliance teams did, even though I left one team that was progging on it because of really bad behavior on the team, and went to another team that had just killed it. I guess I killed it with that team again before Hall of Fame closed, so I still got the Hall of Fame title, which was funny. Right. That's weird. So yeah, that was the thing. But the other thing I've been going into now that we're moving into farm is this is when I tend to like to do things to my computer, like reinstall Windows for a fresh install. And one of the things that I do before I do that, obviously, is try and back everything up, right? So you back up all your files, and I back up all my podcast stuff, and I back up all that stuff. But something I like to really make sure I have a hold on is all of my WoW stuff. So a big thing about that is WeakAuras. WeakAuras does not have a really slick, easy way to export every WeakAura that you have and import every weak aura that you have inside a backup format. You basically have to go one by one through your weak auras, export them as strings. I save them inside other Word documents or inside of Notepad as individual weak auras. And then when you actually reinstall everything, you then go through each Notepad doc and re-import all of your weak auras, right? So the frustrating thing right now is Season 4 is all of the previous raid tiers. So the nicest thing about doing a fresh install previously at this point of the expansion is I don't need any of the weak auras for the earlier bosses. All those earlier bosses are done.
Right.
I don't need to worry about, having the right weak aura packs for Denathrius or for whatever it is, because I'm probably never going to go back and kill him again. If I do, I can do it without having to really optimize, because it's not prog. It's going to be like me killing it with 50 or 60 item levels above what you would have needed, so we can sort of blunder our way through to a certain degree, right? Brute force it. That's not the case this expansion. This expansion, Season 4, has 31 raid bosses. That's what Season 4 is. It's 31 raid bosses, which means that I need all my weak auras for those bosses because they could still be viable. And these are weak auras that aren't just, hey, I went on to, a website and grabbed or got one from a friend who shared me and got it, and I just use it in its default state. Typically, when I get a weak aura, I change its size, change its location, sometimes add a sound to it, sometimes adjust the timer on it, because sometimes it's not just timing a boss ability, but it's timing something else in the raid, like, for example, Jailer jumping into the hole. Is that something that was working for you timing-wise, or moving it up or down a second? Did that work better for you? As far as the way you did it, like, are you jumping on 0 or are you jumping on 1? What works for you? Change the timer a bit, that kind of thing. And so I had to copy a lot of weak auras, and I'm gonna have to import a lot of weak auras. And I, for the first time, sort of had that really snappy feeling of, I'm not looking forward to Season 4 with this raid tier thing, man. Like, 31 bosses that I have to reprog through, if that's what we're doing with our team. I'm not super pumped about that as much as I was. When I start thinking about it that way, like, I know that we're going to knock out a lot of these bosses. I know that some of this is going to be old hat for me, but this experience has got a lot of trauma. This expansion's got a lot of trauma for me, with a lot of raid team bouncing and a lot of stuff falling apart. And it's sort of like how people have nostalgia about going back and visiting Burning Crusade or visiting, Wrath of the Lich King, and they're so excited for it with all the positive nostalgia they have. I have like negative nostalgia about this expansion, and I have to go back and relive those negative feelings on those bosses, which I'm not super looking forward to. So we'll see how Season 4 goes, but that was an experience I had, a mental moment I had when I was copying all my weak auras of like, I don't know if I'm really looking forward to progging 31 bosses in this next 3-month period or whatever window we have.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that the tuning is going to be just kind of face rolly, and that it'll be just kind of relaxing and fun, and not bashing our heads against the wall every week for, the entire season. That would be nice.
It'd be ideal. Yeah, it'd be ideal if because I mean, what makes me hesitant about that is they have an affix applied to the raid, and so that affix is going to be like something you have to play around, which means they want it to be at least somewhat challenging, which makes me feel like face roll is not what they were aiming for, which makes me nervous, because when they weren't aiming for face roll this expansion, they went really hard in the other direction. So I'm hoping that they, we still haven't gotten the answer to the question that we asked a while ago of what version of these bosses are we going to be seeing? Are we going to be seeing entirely post-nerf version? Are we going to be seeing early versions? Are we going to be seeing, like, what Halandris are we getting? Like, what,
Right. And, or should we expect tuning, like, with the season roll? Like, will there be, retuning in advance of that? We don't know right now.
Yeah. So there's I don't know, there's a lot of questions still around it, and I had to share that was a mental thing that I recognized as I was going through my weak auras of like, oh, these are all old weak auras that I would normally be right now triumphantly deleting and feeling great getting rid of, and maybe only keeping a niche one that, like, I might want to edit in future for a different boss or something like that. Right. And instead, I'm sitting in a situation where I feel like I can't get rid of anything because I have no, like, all the Fate Scribe weak auras, like, I have to keep these. Like, I'm going to need them. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting experience to go through. So we'll see how all this pans out. But I had a moment this week that I had to share. So that was that. Anything else for you want to mention before we move into what's going on this week?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I did play a lot of WoW this week, just kind of on my own time and by myself. And the main thing I've been doing is working on that Blood Elf Paladin, and I already got him up to like 54.5. the character didn't exist 2 weeks ago and is like halfway through Shadowlands leveling now, and like 2/3 of the way to Exalted with Silvermoon rep, so that won't take very long to grind out the rest of that once I'm maxed out. And I've been making gold hand over fist on the auction house, selling old mats. So I got like 50k gold on this tune just from mining like fell iron and stuff. So I've been having a great time with that. You know, I did all the Blood Elf starting area stuff, right? I did those 2 zones primarily because of the rep, right? For the new Blood Elf cosmetics, you need to have Exalted Silvermoon rep. So I figured, okay, I better just quest there and get all that quest rep. So I did that. And then I went to Burning Crusade, actually, because it's just, I don't know, Hellfire Peninsula and Zangarmarsh are like my favorite zones to level through because the questing is very dense and simple. And the dungeons are also very straightforward. So I had a good time with that. And I was getting some rep along the way with the tabard and some of the dungeons I was doing. So that was awesome. And yeah, I also taking advantage of Firefest, like the dailies for Firefest and the buff, and now we got Darkmoon Faire going on, so I should be able to get the paladin, this other paladin, maxed out pretty soon, and then I can grind up the rest of that rep and get that stuff. But I've been really enjoying it. I did have a weird kind of whiplashy moment though, because I was doing some dungeons, right? I was doing like the Hellfire Citadel dungeons, ramps and Blood Furnace and Shattered Halls, and I did some of the stuff from the Coil Fang dungeons, and then I hit 50, and I haven't done like Chromie time or anything, so I didn't know what would happen. I hit 50, right. And then you have like 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever, and it just ports you back to Orgrimmar. It's just like, okay, you have to go now. So then I got out in Shadowlands, and I had to get to about like, I had to get to 51 in order to queue for a dungeon because I'm rocking heirlooms, and they were level 50 item level until I hit level 51. So I did that, and then I went, I went straight from doing Burning Crusade dungeons, which are basically like kill all the stuff in this hallway and tank and spank the boss. And then I ended up doing Shadowlands dungeons, and like the Shadowlands level up dungeons are so much more complex than, the old school level up dungeons. It's just, it's a little bit weird. It's like, do we really need this degree of complexity for level up dungeons? Like, I did Mists of Tyrsnight, and you have the maze, and you have, the guessing game boss, and you have all that stuff is exactly the same as it is in higher difficulties, whereas in Hellfire Ramparts, you go up and around and kill the bosses, and then you're done, and each one of the level up dungeons in each of the 4 Shadowlands zones have something that is just like way more complex and complicated than, older dungeons. And I'm sure like recent ones fall into that category too, but it's just really weird that a leveling path you can take is doing dungeons from 2007 that are just tank and spank everything. And then as soon as you hit 50, now you're doing Shadowlands stuff, which has a way higher degree of complexity, and you need to, work as a team more, and there's more strategy involved. So that was a little bit weird. It was stark. Like it really felt weird that, oh wow, this happens in the level up version of this too. Like what I was just doing was so much more straightforward. So that was pretty weird. I wonder how like players who have been gone for a really long time or new players like feel about that when they get to that break point where it's like, okay, you're in Shadowlands now. Here's how the dungeons work.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out how to take a game that's had so much development over such a long period of time and streamline something like that. That is streamline the experience for players. That is a very tricky thing to do. Like even graphically accepting what Burning Crusade dungeons look like versus Shadowlands dungeons or BFA dungeons is a very hard thing to like wrap your head around a lot of the time. So yeah, I can see that being a bit of a thing.
Yeah, it was just really weird. But overall, I think the experience of leveling a fresh tune has been really fun. It's very straightforward. Like everything's very lucrative. It's just a smooth process. So I've been enjoying it, and I figure I'll probably cap that tune out this week. And once I get the cosmetics and stuff, then I'm probably done with that character. But that was the whole reason why I made it and why I've been playing it, was to unlock that stuff. So I'll be on to the next thing, I guess, once that's done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, Jason, let's jump into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week in WoW is the Mists of Pandaria Time Walking event, meaning that characters 50 and above can access time walking versions of Gate of the Setting Sun, Temple of the Jade Serpent, Stormstow Brewery, Shadowpan Monastery, and Mogushan Palace, as well as Scholomance. Man, it's so, like I forget that they revamped that dungeon, and that's a thing.
Yeah, the Scholar revamp was pretty good.
Yeah, it was a great dungeon.
I think it took like a classic dungeon, like one of the all-timers in terms of, old school dungeons, and modernized it to where you can do it in a match-made thing like time walking, and it feels pretty good.
Yeah. As far as the Sign of the Mist buff is also up, meaning Mists of Pandaria reputation gains from combat and quests are increased by 50%. So if you have some old Mist reps you want to get leveled up, feel free to jump in and do those. And dungeons drop 210 eye level gear, and of course there's the quest to complete 5, which gets you that normal cache of Sepulchre gear at 252 item level. So be sure that you're taking advantage of time walking if you're trying to gear up a tune. Also, those badges are available, and you can always spend the time walking badges that you get for mounts and pets and whatnot, cosmetics, which is pretty cool. I'm sure you're taking advantage of those too. All right, this week in Oribos, you want to be picking up a new deal quest on War Mode to help you complete your patterns within patterns nice and quickly. Just doing some War Mode stuff inside of Zereth Mortis. When you pick up the patterns within patterns quest, that new deal quest is worth 30%, which is excellent. You don't actually have to kill any other players, so it's pretty cool. And then, of course, there's the world boss out there that gives you another 20. And so that plus the daily quests gets you almost all the way there. You can do the whole thing in less than an hour, which feels really good. There's also your dungeon quests in Oribos to pick up. The Other Side and Sanguine Depths are two that you need to pick up if you're going to be running dungeons this week. And our brawl this week is Gravity Lapse, which is less exciting than you normally would get. It's just a minute of no gravity inside of Eye of the Storm is all it is, basically. Every minute you lose gravity and you float in the air and you try not to float off a cliff or get knocked back really far or whatever it is, and then it turns back on. It was like, to me, this is like what early brawls are, right? It's like the first attempt at what's something wacky we can do that's not too wacky. Well, let's just have people float inside Eye of the Storm every minute. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could just make this the regular rules for Eye of the Storm, and I don't think anybody would really blink too much.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people might not even notice. But yeah, not like the most exciting brawl. Like if you're not really doing the stuff on a regular basis anyway, I don't think this is a week where you're like, man, I got to set aside some time for this brawl. Like I got to check it out. It's fine. It's not. It doesn't really mix up the gameplay as much as some of the other ones, and it's not like its own kind of mode or mini game like Cooking Impossible or like the one with the NPCs.
Yeah, so I've already mentioned Antros, the world boss up inside Zereth Mortis, knocking him out for that 259 eye level gear, as well as the Anima and that completion towards your Patterns Within Patterns quest. There's also Morgeth, the Tormentor of the Damned in Desmataron. That's the other world boss, drops a bunch of Anima for you too and some 233 gear. And of course we got the big dredger, Nurgash Muckformed in Revendreth, dropping which memories for us, Jason?
So if you got an Edgelord class, then Nurgash has you covered. You got Frenzied Monstrosity for DKs, Erratic Felkor for DHs, and Hachikir's Madness for Warlocks. So if you're kind of like a spooky character, then you want to make sure you get out there and get your memories if you don't have them, because, you want to light up those UI panels. And this way, if you have like a character that maybe you leveled up later on or something, if you need to rely on those random roll memory unlocks to round out your powers, then you can just, take this one out of the pool right away.
Exactly. As far as Mythic Plus goes, we have our Tyrannical, Sanguine, and Storming, so bosses have more health and inflict more damage. When slain, non-boss enemies leave behind a lingering pool of Ichor that heals their allies and damages players, and while in combat, enemies periodically summon whirlwinds. So overall, like, Sanguine, kind of irritating, but the pools don't last as long as they used to, so it's more of a non-affix. I mean, the biggest thing is players running through it inside tight corridors mean they're going to take a hit. So just anticipating that, making sure you're not just accidentally killing yourself by running over a puddle in-game, of course. And then Storming is, kind of, again, tight spaces. It's a problem, but outside of that, it's not a huge issue. Tanks can just soak these for their DPS. Really, it's only an issue if it denies you from getting into a space you really want to get into. I'm thinking like the Night Fae boss in The Other Side, since that's also a dungeon for this week. You could end up in a situation where you want to step into one of the things to get launched into the air, but you get knocked up by a Storming, so you miss it, so you explode, and it's all bad news. and Sanguine being, I'm sorry, not Sanguine, Tyrannical being just Tyrannical, and it is what it is. So when it comes to Tyrannical, bosses are going to hurt. It is what it is. You got to get your Tyrannical weeks in. I actually have started to enjoy more that they broke up, at least the idea that they broke up Fortified and Tyrannical as far as points go, if you're trying to earn IO, if you will, for your character. That it basically, you just accept that, yeah, there's going to be Tyrannical weeks, and Tyrannical weeks you can only get so high, and there's going to be Fortified weeks, and Fortified weeks you can get higher, and that's, you know, just the nature of M+, and it's not, well, it's a Tyrannical week, so no one do any M+. It's like it gives people a reason to get out there if they want to get their score higher, specifically for Tyrannical stuff.
Yeah, it gives you some stuff to maybe target that you wouldn't otherwise, right, or something like that. I mean, I think overall that whole revamp to the system worked out pretty well. I mean, I think this is a great Tyrannical week. You know, obviously bosses are going to be difficult because of the Tyrannical thing, and that can cause some complications. But I mean, you could blast through trash this week. Storming is annoying, but it's very low impact, especially compared to the way it was when it released. Sanguine. You know, your tank needs to be aware of it. Try to kill stuff that, you know, maybe has like a ranged auto attack or is a caster first, because they're harder to move. So they're more likely to get stuck in something. So if you're, you know, picking targets, try to kill something that is harder to move first. And the tank just needs to be, you know, when stuff gets low, just backing it up, moving it around. Just be aware that it's going to happen. One nice thing is that, you know, I believe Sanguine's like a percentage health heal, and it's not a fort week. So it's, even if you get something that's healing, it's not going to be as big numbers as it could be on a fort week. So that's good. And, you know, it shouldn't really be an issue on the boss fights. Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, there's a couple fights, boss fights, where storming could create issues with certain boss mechanics. So you just got to be aware of that and plan accordingly. It is really good if, like, the tank, for example, can soak up the whirlwinds and just keep them out of everybody's way. They don't really hurt. They're just disruptive. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think this is one of the easier Tyrannical weeks you're going to see. So if you're still pushing for, you know, we're running out of time here this season. So if you're still pushing for some kind of achievement or something and you need Tyrannical, like, this really isn't a bad week to go get it, I don't think. I mean, you know, Sanguine Depths might suck this week. Kind of, especially like last boss with the positioning, with storming going out and stuff, and you might get bounced out of the shield you need to stand in. You know, there's stuff like that. Gambit, right? Like there's some positioning requirements on Gambit that storming can be really disruptive for, but you know, overall, I mean, you're gonna have to deal with something, right? You're doing Mythic Plus. The affixes are there to present layers of challenge. You got to deal with something. I feel like this combo is something you can work with and you can play around and make it happen. So hopefully I will get to do more than one keystone this week. That is my hope.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty easy goal to accomplish. It's whether or not you get 4 in is the big question, because that's the break point, right? If you're going to do more than one, you need to try and do 4. That's the tricky part. All right, as far as Darkmoon Faire goes this week, it's still happening. You can still go down there and get your buff and head out to do your questing and whatnot, getting extra experience and reputation from either riding the carousel or riding the roller coaster or buying one of those Darkmoon hats and getting out there and using those. There's, of course, all the events that happen there, too, with the pet battles and the dance competition and the racing and the concerts you can go to and all the transmog and the arcade, and there's so much stuff at the Darkmoon Faire, and it runs till Saturday night, so be sure you're taking advantage of that while you can. If you're somebody who's trying to get reputation, let's say particularly this is a week where you want to try and get some Pandaria reputation, 50% buff plus 10% buff, very nice rep if that's something you're trying to max out. Yep. Let's say you're trying to get some dragon rep or something, be sure you're heading out and getting all the buffs first. I don't know if you remember the dragon racing back in Pandaria, but that was a thing.
Oh yeah, the Cloud Serpent.
That's
forget
right.
What they were called.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but there were a lot of daily quests in Pandaria.
Yeah.
And but so this is if you need to do something in that realm, and this is a really good week to do that, because man, you can go do a whole bunch of dailies and get a lot of bang for your buck with those reputation buffs.
Yeah, for sure. And then outside of that, we can dive into our news posts for the week. So the first one of which was the I guess announcement of when season 4 is happening is basically how this works, because they went, Shadowlands season 3 is ending soon. That was one of the posts that we got. Basically, Linksy reached out and said, greetings, champions. Shadowlands season 3 is coming to a close, and our experimental season 4 will begin with the weekly reset of August 2nd. So for those who are curious, August 2nd is when we see season 4 begin. And here's what to expect to end in season 3. As far as PvP goes, obviously the current season of Shadowlands PvP will end at 10 p.m. Eastern Time the night before maintenance in each region, so just keep that in mind. And then, of course, with the season's end, you'll no longer be possible to earn PvP seasonal rewards, titles, or Shadowlands Season 3 rankings. And then, as far as Mythic Plus goes for Season 3, the current Season 3 Mythic Plus content will end with the start of regional maintenance on August 2nd, so it's going to run longer. It'll run like 9 hours? No, less than that. It's like 6 hours longer than the PvP season will go. And with the season's end, ratings for qualifying for that 0.1% Cryptic Hero title and achievement will be recorded, so keep that in mind. And the Cryptic Hero title will be rewarded during the following weeks after the season ends, so be sure to wait to change factions until after you have received the title. So this is like a really interesting thing, because I know people who've been farming the crap out of this who have recently faction changed. So I don't know if that's going to affect their situation, but I assume that it won't affect it until the actual season has officially ended, and you have to wait the couple of weeks to get your title before you then do a change, is what they're implying here with that Cryptic Hero. So keep that in mind.
That makes sense, yeah.
But I've always found it interesting to see like this not closing until reset, because it means that there's going to be some people out there, the very few people out there who want to get that 0.1%, who are running keys all night up to reset to make sure that they remain in or accomplish that 0.1%. I know with last season, one of our demon hunters got, I think he was like 150 rating or 120 rating above the next person, and was like, I'm safe. I think I'm just, no one's going to get that much rating in this window. I'm safe. So I'm going to stop. And they ended up being safe, but it is scary to think about, like, if someone's been holding on to a particular keystone and they wait till that last night to run it to try and get that extra 40 points or 50 points or whatever it is to jump their position. That's a possibility. So it'll be interesting to see how all that pans out, and good luck to everyone who's trying for it. They intend to close the current rating tier for achievements such as Ahead of the Curve with the weekly reset of August 2nd. And they have additional tuning in the works with focus on encounters of Sepulchre. They know there are currently far fewer guilds on track to get cutting edge in particular than in past years, and they want to address that in the coming weeks before Season 3 ends. Okay, so let's take a moment to talk a bit about these achievements going away, Jason. This is a unique thing.
I mean, this is, man, it's hard to feel like this is exciting news, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of where this landed for me. I feel like this is too early since the release of Season 3. It's just not really great timing, I don't think, for a lot of people. You know, I mean, obviously, it's summertime and people are going to be on vacation and doing stuff and busy and whatever. So I know they got to start the season at some point, and this leads you to believe that maybe we're looking at like November-ish for Dragonflight if they want to get like a 3-ish month season in here at the end. 5 months is really not a lot of time for AOTC and Cutting Edge to go away in an 11 boss raid that was hard as nails for most of the time that it existed. I mean, normally these, final tiers of an expansion last twice as long as this at least. I really don't feel like this is enough time to say goodbye to these achievements, which I know people care about. I think you'll still be able to get the AOTC mount without the achievement for the rest of the expansion, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of figured they'd give us at least 6 months in Season 3, and maybe we'd have like a bit of a longer tail with, really nerfed bosses and just dial-in tuning some more and everything like that. And instead, it's like 5 months on the dot, and that's all you got to get what you need out of this raid. And I don't know, man. Maybe that would have been okay for Castle Nathria, but for Sepulchre, it seems really punishing. And for myself, like I not excited to like ramp up into a new season in another month here. I could have used at least another month in season 3 to just kind of relax and farm stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and to speak to the cutting edge comment, like there's only been 400 raid teams that have actually finished the raid. That's 400 teams is the number. I think in previous years there was like 1,100 or something like that by the time this thing closed out. So it is a noticeable, as they mentioned, it is a noticeable amount of teams that have not actually managed to clear this yet. So it does feel like that's coming to a close very quickly. This feels very like, and it's perspective, right? Like normally this raid tier, the team that I raid with would have been done 2 months ago, would have been finished the tier. And so there would have been 8 weeks so far of farming. There'd be another 4 weeks before this actually goes live. So we would have spent 12 weeks farming this raid. And so at this point, I'd be like, oh yeah, of course, if you don't have cutting edge yet, shut her down. Like, that's fine, right? That's normally like where my mind would be at. It's very weird right now where we essentially finished our cutting edge 3 and a bit weeks ago. And so this feels very fast. It's like half the amount of farm time before cutting edge goes away. Feels very fast for me. So it's a bit strange to be looking at this and seeing the season ending. And I think just as much as they're sticking to a schedule that might be a month faster or a little bit faster than we normally see, it's not substantially different. It's just the raid tier was so much more difficult to complete that there's so many fewer teams who've had the opportunity to actually get through it. And the teams who did get through it have spent so much more time in the raid completing the content that they essentially have not had as much of a break and had as much of a breather after this content before the next stuff happens. And so it's interesting to sort of look at these timelines and see that happening. I personally feel like cutting edge as an achievement, it should be something that's very prestigious and should be something you have to work towards earning for sure. And I would be fine with cutting edge going away after, the first 3 months of a raid tier going out and not being attached to a season launch. I think this would bite less if it wasn't attached to a season launch for a lot of people, because they'd know that there was this set cutoff time of 12 weeks after a raid tier comes out or whatever it is. The ability to earn this thing goes away. And that was just a set default thing. When it's attached to a season launch, and season launches can vary, as we are seeing right now, in how frequently they happen and when they happen, I feel like there's a lot more feeling of unfairness when it's not a set period of time that this can happen with. So I would like to see them take ahead of the curve and cutting edge and decouple them from season ends and have them set at certain periods of time after a raid comes out so people can actually head towards that achievement and earn it within the 12 weeks or 16 weeks or whatever the number is they decide is the ahead of the curve window or is the cutting edge window, and not have them attached to, well, this is going to be a shorter season, so you only have 3 months to do this, or this is going to be a longer season, so you have 8 months, and then this is going to be a short one, so it's 5 months. So it's that affects teams, because teams' raid schedules don't adjust based off of the length of a season. They don't go, oh, well, you know what, it's going to be a 5-month season, so we got to raid an extra day a week, right? Like that's not a thing. That's not how it works. People typically raid their consistent schedule all the time, and depending on how long the season is, they either get it done or they don't. And I think if people could then plan out their schedules around, you know what, this cutting edge happens in the first 12 weeks, so if we want to earn this, we need to put in this much time to be able to accomplish that. And then Blizzard actually released content that was at the intended difficulty to be completed within that window of time for teams who are putting in the effort for it. Then that would be the other big deciding factor. So I feel like there's some tweaking that can happen around cutting edge and ahead of the curve that would be good to see. I do hope the mounts are still something that can be earned for ahead of the curve, because it is really nice when they do like the charity moose is what everyone always references, where people were sort of getting together and making sure everyone got their moose, which was really cool. So I do hope that a similar thing can happen with this raid tier for people getting their ahead of the curve mounts. That'd be really nice, but we'll see how all that pans out. I know that we have a lot of Jailer mythic mounts to farm, and I imagine it's going to stay as a consistent 100% drop off the kills until the end of the expansion. So we're probably just going to be going into Sepulchre, using the skip and killing Jailer on its non-empowered weeks. I'm going to start referring to them as which raid tier is empowered, because I think that's going to be the best way to go for it, just to make sure that we're always killing Jailer to get people their mounts until the whole raid team has theirs, because we've obviously only seen 2 so far. So it'd be good to get the other 22 mounts that we need to get, which is 11 weeks of, or 11 kills, which is essentially 11 weeks to be able to actually get this done. And when you're talking about when Dragonflight's going to come out, it actually starts to look like, oh, this could be really close to when Dragonflight comes out, when we actually finish getting people their mounts. So something to work at for sure.
Yeah, like I'm not, if this indicates that Dragonflight's like around the corner and closer than maybe we thought it was even a few weeks ago, like that's great. I'm not going to complain about getting a new expansion faster, getting out of Shadowlands sooner, etc. But yeah, I don't love this timing. I don't think this really is what a lot of players are interested in, and I hope Season 4 is cool. It'll be nice to be able to just like buy some really powerful gear from the vendors and target some pieces that you want and just have them. That's awesome. I don't know if the Fated raids are going to be fun or not. I guess we'll see once we get in there and see how they feel. I mean, as you kind of alluded to earlier, I'm not really thrilled about. I would kind of rather just farm Sepulchre until Dragonflight comes out than to go back and be doing like a rotating schedule of the older raids. And I'm not enthused about the dungeon pool for Mythic Plus either. So.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that.
Yeah, like it's just not.
It's true. I mean, Karazhan's gonna be cool. I gotta put it out there. Karazhan for the first few weeks, fun novelty. I'm down for that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's hard for me to muster like legitimate excitement for any of this stuff. I mean, I'm gonna keep my teams going and stuff, and we'll do whatever people are in for. But yeah, I wish they would have pushed this out a little bit farther. Just give people some more time to get situated with what they needed out of Season 3. 5 months is just not long enough for a traditional season of any kind, let alone the final raid tier release, in my opinion. But if what it comes down to is, oh, well, we're looking at launching in like early to mid-November, and then this means that if we don't do the season roll, that the experimental Season 4 is going to be 6 weeks long or 2 months long or whatever. Okay, I mean, I get it. A lot of people are really just disengaged and aren't going to be playing in Season 4 anyway, I feel like. I mean, I've heard from a lot of people who are like, yeah, I'm just going to do other stuff or play Classic or whatever until Dragonflight comes out. So, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, if you're still pushing for a raid achievement or something, or you're pushing either PvP or Mythic Plus rating, like, yeah, you got 4 resets left beginning this week.
Yeah, and to emphasize our imminent, waiting for alpha announcement is, if they do want to release in November, like, you got to get this going, man. They have like a month of alpha before they roll into their regular beta cycle. So they need to get that going and out the door for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, we might see a different public testing schedule than we've seen. Obviously, it seems obvious it's going to be shorter than we've seen in recent expansions, but maybe. Also, what Blizzard refers to as alphas and versus betas versus the live game is a bit different than how some other studios do it. So sure. I wouldn't be surprised to see the alpha cycle be like a month long or something, and then spin up the rest of it. But we'll see. I mean, hopefully we'll get a lot more clarity on that over the next couple weeks here.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing that was mentioned in that post was raid tuning, which we got. Basically, starting today, this is some hot fixes that are going in. They've previously mentioned that they're working on them, and so they've finally arrived. Anduin's Hope and Anduin's Doubt health has been reduced by 20% on normal and heroic difficulties. Reduced the movement speed of Anduin's Hope by 15% on heroic and normal difficulties. And Grim Fate reduced by 200% to 150%, from 200% to 250% on mythic difficulty. So, massive health nerfs on these Hope and Doubt. And it's a movement speed reduction to help you make sure you get them all down before they reach Anduin in that downstairs phase. Is this feeling like it's going to help your team out, Jason?
I don't think so. I mean, it's getting touched up a little bit here. It's fine. I mean, we still have those like brain fart wipes on Anduin because somebody shoots a Wicked Star through a Grim Reflection or something. I mean, right. I don't know how I can avoid that except to like cease to take the people that always do that, which is not always an option. I think this is okay. One thing they should do is get people out of the downstairs phases in phases 1 and 2 more quickly, right? Even if you're not having a problem getting all of your willpower, you should be able to get out of there 20% faster, right? At least.
Yeah.
So that could be big in terms of managing those overlaps with the party being split up. So that's kind of nice. I mean, I feel like Anduin's tuning is okay now. What I would have preferred to see, or what I would like to see them maybe still do before it's all said and done, is drop Grim Reflections to 2 spawns per cast, down from 3, and nerf Befouled Barrier a little bit more. Befouled Barrier has been nerfed a lot. I think it's still a little too beefy for, sheer convenience and for re-clears and to be like a fun thing to deal with. It's still just a little bit much, I think, considering where we're at in the life cycle of this content. And yeah, I mean, Grim Reflections they're a showstopper, right? Like if you do something stupid with Grim Reflections, then you all die. So
yeah,
I think those are going to continue to wipe teams on this fight, even for re-clears or whatever. Teams that are trying to get a jailer kill on their chosen difficulty and don't have one yet. They're probably going to spend time dying on Anduin still. It's just weird. I mean, the fight came in so ridiculously overtuned, and they've nerfed it so much, but I think it still needs some tweaks to just be like boss 8 of 11. It's still not quite there in my opinion, but I mean, this stuff is definitely good. Like you should be able to get out of the Kingsmourn Hungers phase way quicker, so that should help out your whole team breaking those Befouled Barriers and stuff.
Yeah,
I guess it kind of, in a way, it is kind of a soft nerf to Befouled Barrier, because you can get whatever healers you send down to
back up faster.
Kingsmourn. They're up faster, that they can assist with the barrier that's remaining.
Yeah, a nerf like this is something that has a lot of ripples in the pond, if you will, when you drop a nerf like this into a boss. When you make it so that the team that goes downstairs can get back up faster, it means that you then have more damage that can be done to the boss. As you said, more healing that can be done to barriers. Your team is less at risk at downstairs at standing in swirlies. There's like these compounding effects that a nerf like this has. It's similar to like when they nerfed the amount of health that someone who was mind controlled on Jailer what you'd have to DPS through before you broke the mind control, right? Not only are you now having to dedicate less DPS to breaking that person out, that person's now broken out faster, which means that they are then able to go back to DPSing Jailer faster, which means overall you're actually having more, like you're almost nerfing the health on Jailer by doing this, right? It's an interesting thing to sort of look at the big picture of some of these nerfs and how they work. So yeah, I think overall it's a good change. I think it'll just be interesting to see how it feels when you get back in there. If you're feeling like the team you send down goes down, is down for 8 seconds and then pops back up, that could end up feeling really good about with helping with some of the other challenges on the fight. Although, like you said, positioning issues are positioning issues, and that's not something they can necessarily nerf without dramatically changing a mechanic. Okay, Lords of Dread. Boss health reduced by 10% on all difficulties, and Swarm of Decay and Swarm of Darkness damage reduced by 15% on Heroic. So yeah, I mean, boss health nerf is boss health nerf. It means you're probably going to get one less Swarm of Decay or Swarm of Darkness that you might have to actually deal with at this point. Typically, you tend to get one right at the very end of the fight when you're DPSing to try and kill the boss. You're sort of doing that through a Swarm of Decay or Swarm of Darkness. This means you might kill them before they even arrive at doing that, which is really nice. And then if you do arrive at doing that, or at least throughout the fight, you can potentially commit one less healer or one less healer cooldown to dealing with these Swarm of Decays and Darkness because of that DPS nerf on Heroic difficulty. So yeah, there's overall good changes with Lords of Dread.
Yeah, this is pretty huge. I mean, this is one of those fights where as you kind of gear up and through, it becomes easier. It speeds up quite a bit. But I mean, 10%, that's a significant chunk of health coming off of these bosses, especially when you have those double damage phases during Swarm. And Swarm can still be pretty punishing. You know, I because of various factors with my team comp and my healer makeup, like we've had points in time where we really had to micromanage raid CDs and stuff on Heroic just to be able to survive. And I think taking it down 15% should make it much more manageable. And regardless of who we have on hand to bring that night to do the fight. So yeah, I like this. I mean, I'm not sure that Lords really desperately needed a nerf on like heroic at this point in time, but I'm not going to argue with it either. I'm glad to see it. I want to re-clear this place a few more times and get through these bosses faster. So yeah, this is definitely going to be, it's going to allow us to do that for sure. And yeah, being able to skip a swarm or something at the very end of the fight, skip one of those phase transitions, that would be huge. So yeah, nice changes for Lords.
Yeah, it's like a similar nerf that they did to Halandris, right? Where you're basically now able to actually push the boss before he even does his shielded phase. That means you just skip that whole AoE damage, which it can be a similar thing of, oh, well, this actually makes this fight substantially easier just by tweaking the health a little bit. All right, Rygelon.
Yeah, being able to avoid that on Halandris is huge, too, huge. Because he's like vacuuming in the orbs, and then it's really easy to make a mistake with that, which can lead to wipes. So, yeah, anything that can speed up phase transitions or let you skip stuff is always good. Yeah.
All right, as far as Rygelon goes, boss health has been reduced by 10% on all difficulties, and the damage from Dark Eruption was reduced by 75% on heroic difficulty. Wow, okay, the 75% nerf to damage is massive. For a mechanic that could cause wipes for you. So that's a big, affordance creation for players. And then the boss health is actually pretty big on all difficulties. So we were essentially getting him to his last phase when we were progging him, and this was before previous health nerfs and mechanic nerfs, when he was at like 14% or something like that. If that means that we essentially enter that, we could skip earlier phases or enter that last phase at 3 or 4% hit points and just knock them over, that'll feel really good. So yeah, again, this is you being able to skip out on potentially very dangerous situations or times where there's almost like a soft enrage for your raid by reducing boss health like this.
Yeah, and I mean the nerf to Dark Eruption makes me think that it might not be like a wipe if somebody can't get their debuff cleansed in the whatever it's called, the collapsing star or whatever it is that you have to run into, which would be nice because that's where almost all of your early deaths happen on this fight. Is either the ads got killed too fast or somebody stepped in one they weren't supposed to or something, and then you don't have one, or somebody has the debuff and they're just not paying attention and they don't cleanse it, and then they die and everybody around them dies, and then there's 3 of you left alive, and then you have to reset it. That might not happen anymore on heroic. I'm not sure. I mean, like, that ability hits pretty hard, but I think like 75% nerf is massive. I mean, that's ridiculous. They never nerf the damage of an ability by that much. So that might just make it so if you have an oopsie with Dark Eruption that you just heal up and keep going, which I think is fine. I mean, Rygelon's a pretty simple fight. You don't have a lot of other stuff to really tweak here anyway. So if this is something that people are getting hung up on or not re-clearing cleanly, this just gives you so much more wiggle room when those debuffs are going out.
Yeah, a nerf this size reminds me of if they actually intended a mechanic like this to be more severe on Mythic, really, is what they were aiming for. They're like, you know what, Heroic, this wasn't supposed to be like a one-shot mechanic. This was supposed to be hey, you need to learn how to do this because it's way more punishing on Mythic. And we sort of, it almost feels like they basically left a Mythic mechanic and Heroic kind of idea, right? And they're like, oops, let's just change that back down to where it should be. Because 75% is just such a large nerf.
Yeah, I mean, you had to really micromanage those debuffs going out. You had to have assignments of like where everybody's going, to cleanse their debuffs. And I mean, obviously, like, it is kind of the main thing you're doing in the main phase of the fight. So that's okay. But yeah, if this just makes it so that you can kind of YOLO it a little bit more, then that's great. Because, again, like this is a pretty straightforward boss, but it can be really frustrating when you just, you have a wipe out of nowhere because somebody missed a Q.
Yeah. Okay, let's dig into the meat and potatoes of this. Now that, Alliance Hall of Fame's closed, both Hall of Fames are closed. They want to get as many jailer cutting edge kills as they can in there, apparently, because the health was reduced on Heroic and Normal by 15% and on Mythic by 10%. Just right across the board, Jailer's health nerfed by large percentages. And to emphasize this, the majority of teams, and especially my team, were wiping in that sub 10% range, right? Like our first time seeing Phase 4, I think we wiped at like 11 or 12% or something, which now would have just been a kill because the 10% health nerf plus the previous health nerf, just like the boss would have been dead in like the first time we saw that phase. This means you push those phases faster. You're able to get into them faster. You stay in them for less periods of time. Like, there's so many things that this compounds, right? Like, phase 1 lasts for a certain percentage of health, and phase 2 lasts for a certain percentage of health. And so you're kind of in that situation of like, wow, okay, like, we're getting to the point where you're just pushing through these phases so quickly and pushing through this boss so quickly. What is the strat even going to look like anymore? So health nerfs like this on bosses can be pretty substantial, and this is not an outlier. This is very clearly something that they are trying to make very accessible for players, which is good, because teams on normal and heroic who want to kill this boss should have a substantially easier time. If you were a team that wiped at 20% on this boss is dead now for you. Just keep that in mind. Like, you probably have the extra 5% you need to kill this boss, because 15% reduced health on normal and heroic is massive. So let's just address that first.
We were talking about it, offline. Well, not offline, but off air last week when the season roll thing came out, and before we had numbers in the nerfs, and I was like, they need to nerf this stuff like 15%, and we saw kind of targeted nerfs that didn't really go after the entire raid instance. Although I think for the most part, the tuning in the earlier bosses is okay. They mostly are gimmies if your team is somewhat practiced at this point. But yeah, so glad to see 15% on normal and heroic. I think that's about where it needs to be if they're trying to get people to meet their goal. I mean, like, we are so far behind the amount of AOTC kills that we should have based on...
It's massive. It's like 8,000 kills or something ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah, like based on previous tiers of this expansion, like, the Jailer has not died even to, heroic teams. So I think 15% is in order. And yeah, it's going to be great, because you can get so much more, so much closer to the end in phase 1. Then you have phase 2, where if you can really manage it and manage the shattering blasts, you can extend that phase out a bit and just push the boss's health that much lower before phase 3 starts. So, I think 15% is where they needed to go. I don't know if these are the last tuning changes we're going to see to this raid before, the season roll, but if they are, I mean, I think, taking Jailer down 15%, it was definitely in line. I think that's pretty much exactly where it needed to be for the heroic and normal modes.
Yeah. Another nerf that came in was domination is now triggered on players with 3 stacks of tyranny, was 2 stacks of tyranny. So that's another, you get that extra little bit of chance before domination kicks in. Decimator no longer includes knockback on heroic and mythic difficulties. Wait, what? Decimator no longer includes knockback on heroic and mythic difficulties. Yeah, excuse me. This was like, FYI, I actually counted on this knockback for all of my movement in mythic difficulty. I intentionally used positioning to knock me over top of holes. That's how I did a lot of my movement to get into positions. It's going to feel really weird to go in there. It already did feel weird on normal to do it and not have a knockback, to now just not have it on mythic either. Like, obviously there's issues, and I'd posted stuff inside, I know, our Discord about this before, of showing clips of like Jailer lining up his smash in one direction and at the last second spinning and dropping it somewhere else and knocking a bunch of people off the platform and into holes, because he just chose to rotate. Because it's either like, if you push him on his push his health at a certain percentage or something like that, he can start free moving while he's doing his slam. It's just really weird overlap stuff that can happen. It's either to avoid that stuff happening, or they just felt like this was a high cause of wipes for teams. But yeah, that's a like, literally to me, that's removing a mechanic. That's just like, we're removing this mechanic from your dance.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody was really standing in Decimator for the most part, right? But I mean, we would frequently have oopsie deaths to Decimator knockbacks, especially as the fight went on. It's just they kind of keep layering on stuff to pay attention to, and Decimator is a little bit hard to make out sometimes, because it's kind of the same color as a lot of the rest of the room, and it might not be anywhere near anything that you're looking at, and so then it's hard to figure out where you're going to get bounced, and then you just don't pay attention, and then you're dead.
Yeah.
Now you just have to not stand in the big bluish, whitish swirly, and then you don't have to worry about anything else with Decimator. So
yeah,
that's nice. I mean, it would be really frustrating. Like, okay, we do this huge health nerf. We're lining this thing up to be killed by a lot of teams, but this particular pull, like 3 people just got bounced into the holes during decimators, and then they got too far behind. And this was something that was a bit harder to control. There's so many elements into the way like decimator would work and the knockback would work, and everything going on in the room. So it's a little bit weird to see it gone, but I'm not going to complain because I just want to kill this boss a couple more times, and I don't want people getting knocked to their death because I didn't notice where decimator was.
Yeah. Okay, and then this is a mythic specific mechanic, but Azerite Radiation. And so Azerite Radiation is gained when someone tries to heal Azeroth, and you basically have these puddles that look like gasoline puddles because they're Azerite puddles at the back of the room, and your players create a chain of people between that puddle and Azeroth's heart, whatever it is, soul, whatever that thing is in the middle of Azeroth. And when someone steps into the puddle, it creates a chain that goes through all these players and then hits Azeroth and heals it. That was the goal of the mechanic. But every time it ticks 3 times, and every time it ticks, you get a buff, and this buff is Azerite Radiation. And Azerite Radiation increased your damage and healing by 3%. And so it stacked up 3 times. So you got a 9% increased damage and healing buff, and you could technically, it's 3 times per puddle, and you could technically refresh it before you actually even moved on to the next puddle. Like if you moved to the next puddle quickly, you could refresh it before it went away, and then you could get up to, I think it was 6 stack was the cap, or 5 stack was the cap that you could get to. I think it was 5. And so you get to 15%. So they also buffed this to 7% per stack. So from 3% to 7%, which means players who do Azerite Radiation now get a 21% damage and healing buff from getting their 3 stack. And obviously if you refreshed it early, you'd get even higher, up towards like a 50% damage increase range. Yeah, that's another pretty substantial, ridiculous nerf.
Yeah. That is a massive buff to that effect. That's more than doubling the effect per stack. That's huge.
Yeah, so this is also one of those things of, if you're going to reduce the health of Jailer by 10% on Mythic difficulty and do this, it's essentially like a 20 to 30% health nerf on Jailer, because your entire DPS squad is going to be pumping, 21%, 20% more damage basically through the entirety of phase 1, 2, and into 3. Because you do also get the buff in phase 3, which is massive. And then if you do the strat that we were doing, where you get even more stacks, it's even higher. And the thing that discouraged you from getting more stacks was the amount of damage you take when this ability actually went off. And the damage you take was from an ability called Surging Azerite. Well, Surging Azerite damage was also nerfed by 15%, which means it's now even easier to get and heal through that damage for your team. For each of those stacks. So that was another nerf that came in. And then on top of that, the Surging Azerite heal, the amount it actually heals Azeroth, is actually up to 5% per tick from 4%, which means you now need fewer heals to actually reach Azeroth to be successful in that phase. This is a nerf to me that I think should have gone in much sooner. Surging Azerite was one of the biggest causes of wipes for us towards the very end of our prog, where we'd basically have someone be out of position or something happen with the heal where it didn't make it to Azeroth for 1 or 2 ticks. And if you missed more than 1 tick, you basically just wiped, because by the time you got to phase 3, you then wouldn't be able to have Azeroth's health high enough before Jailer walked up and smashed it and killed it. And so this is one of those nerfs to me that's a really big one. So 5% up another percent per tick means you can essentially, I think, miss another 1 or 2 heals. And with the health nerf, then obviously you're going to be pushing to phase 4 faster, which means it's probably even more. You can probably miss an entire heal without having to worry about it as much. So this is a really, really huge buff / nerf to this ability. Buff being to our damage and healing. I cannot picture rolling around with, like, you can bring less healers. Like, you're rolling around with 50% increased healing for, like, that's crazy. It's like, what? So yeah, this is they certainly empowered players with this Azerite Radiation change and this Surging Azerite change. So Mythic difficulty will be a lot easier. Rune of Damnation damage reduced by 15% on all difficulties. Rune of Domination will be cast 3 times during phase 2 as opposed to 4 times. And Rune of Compulsion Absorb has been reduced by 35% on heroic difficulty. So yeah, you're gonna be able to get people out of that mind control a lot faster. Yeah. That's for sure.
This is huge. And I mean, this is part of the thing about, you want to maximize the amount of damage you do to the boss in phase 2 on heroic, right? Because you can, if you play well, you can extend that phase a bit longer. If you play poorly, then you're going to be out of it fast, and then phase 3 is going to be a nightmare. But now, I mean, these the bubbles on the mind control targets were pretty hefty, and you had to get positioning really locked in, and you had to have everybody at the ready with stuff to lock down these targets and blow them up. You're still going to want to do that. A good strat is still a good strat, but you're going to be able to break them out so much faster, which then is more time that you're spending DPSing the bosses instead of absorb shields in phase 2. So, yeah, this is a great change. You know, you still want to have people like line up underneath the boss so that you can easily lock them down, but those shields are going to pop so much faster. You can just get right back onto the boss and just drop them down a little bit farther in phase 2. I love it. This is Rune of Compulsion is kind of an annoying mechanic, so you know. Especially because like your characters move so fast when the rune pops and they start running to the edge, and man, it's like if you don't break somebody out, you just lost so much opportunity. You know, you just had people like using buttons on them and trying to break them out, and then they didn't, and then they died anyway, and that was all stuff that you could have done something more productive with. So this will be a lot better. I expect that most teams will have these shields just go away.
Yeah, I expect so too. The other big thing I just remember from our prog with Jailer with the Runes of Compulsion is people who like were in travel form or had used a sprint or dash ability or whatever, who then got mind controlled and moved like a bolt of lightning was a little crazy. So
we'll do that. Yeah,
you had to be careful with those abilities too, for sure. My favorite one was I would drop Ursol's Vortex. I did this once. I dropped Ursol's Vortex before I got mind controlled. And then I actually got mind controlled. I didn't realize I was going to be a target. I put it down preemptively because I was moving away. And then I became a target, which meant my Ursol's Vortex then became an enemy Vortex, which meant all of our melee then got Vortexed, which was they did not enjoy. They really, really hated that. So
no, yeah, you don't want to do that if you can avoid it.
You can avoid putting down AoEs and snares and stuff before you get mind controlled. Try to avoid that for sure. All right. As far as Shattering Blast goes, it was reduced by 20% on all difficulties. Chains of Anguish damage, 30% on Mythic. That's massive. So chains are something that happened a lot in Phase 3 and does a ton of damage to your raid. So 30% reduced on that means like one entirely less healing cooldown / chance of people dying just goes out the window. So that'll be really nice for farm. Domination Will Absorb reduced by 15% on Heroic and Mythic difficulties. And chain breakage damage reduced by 20% on heroic difficulty. So, yeah, lots of health and damage nerfs. This is massive.
Yeah, I mean, Chainbreaker they already nerfed previously, but at this point, it's basically reducing it 20% per hit. Sort of makes it like it's only casting twice from where it is now. So that's good. You just break it faster, get back to what you're doing. It's not going to be as punishing. Dominating Will is still kind of punishing. I mean, that's a big absorb, and 15% reduction on it is not a lot. So I think that is the one thing you're still going to have to make sure, like, okay, when Dominating Will goes out, have those people post up, get people in those circles to soak, and then heal like crazy until Dominating Will goes away. Yeah. It's nice to take it down 15%, but that's still a lot of healing absorb. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. You know, that I think that's going to be one of the most punishing mechanics left on this fight. So just be ready for it.
Yeah. And so just overall, like just basically taking down the amount of snap damage that happens. What I mean by that is on Jailer, there's a lot of situations where people take a really big hit, and then there's another thing that's going to happen 4 seconds later that's another really big hit, and they're basically just reducing the impact of those hits so that if you do not receive a full health heal before the next hit happens, you don't die, right? Like that happened a lot on Mythic, where it's like, we just had an explosion happen that brought me down to 40% hit points, and then I got a bomb, and now I'm running my bomb in. And if no one gets me above 80% health, I'm going to die to the bomb because it's bomb then torment. So it's like you have torment, bomb, torment, and you're like, okay, well, if you don't get topped in between each of those, you just die. So they're making all of that a little bit more manageable is what they're trying to do, I think, with a lot of these nerfs, where you're just not having overlaps where it's like, hey, if everyone isn't paying absolutely 100% attention or doesn't have a personal to use in every situation, then you wipe. So at least they're addressing some of that as well, which is good. Okay. This is an interesting post that came out that I I guess I've been talking a lot about, hey, I want region-wide servers. I want essentially servers that are worldwide where like you can play with EU and you can play with NA and they can play together. And this, I hope, is potentially a step in that direction, because this addresses a lot of the problems that Jason talks about with trying to sell stuff on the auction house. They announced region-wide commodities, an auction house update, which means auction houses across realms on a given region will now share commodity listings, gems, herbs, flasks, consumables, etc. Items that aren't commodities, like armor and weapons, will continue to be realm specific. So if Jason's trying to sell those old tokens that he used to make all of his legendary gear, this isn't going to help him. But if he's trying to sell ore, he can sell a lot of ore very quickly, and he is now essentially open with everybody else on the same market. So this hasn't gone live yet. This is something they're currently PTR testing. And they want people to hop on the PTR to sort of test to make sure this works okay. But the goal behind this is essentially that someone trying to control a market is probably not going to happen anymore. There are going to be so many players in the NA region or in the EU region that are posting things on the auction house. I cannot picture ever someone buying out all of something like ore or flour or whatever it is without more people constantly putting on. It's going to be a much larger market. You're opening this up to a huge amount of players. So overall, I think this will really help lower pop servers with their commodities market. And I think higher pop servers won't notice much of a difference, to be honest. I don't think prices will drop dramatically or anything like that will happen. And if this preps for more systems like this going region-wide and potentially worldwide, I'd be super, super happy to see them move in that direction.
Yeah, this is a cool surprise. I didn't think we'd see anything like this anytime soon. Yeah, this is necessary. Like, my server's auction house economy doesn't really function, and sometimes you just need a market to sell stuff. And, like, yes, prices are going to go down dramatically for commodities and consumables and stuff on my server, for example, but that's a good thing for me, who mostly needs to buy consumables, right? And yeah, now I'll have a much bigger market where when I put stuff up, like, okay, it won't sell for as much, but it'll sell through quickly, which it does not now. So yeah, I would imagine that considering the stratification between big servers and small servers, that I don't think people on larger servers are going to notice too much of a difference in terms of prices, availability of stuff, you know, the time to sell through on stuff that gets listed. It's basically just little servers are going to start having auction houses that, at least in terms of commodities and consumables, the auction houses function, right? Like, yes, I'm still going to be stuck with all of my overpriced and useless legendary base items that I made while I was skilling up. But at least, you know, now I can shift towards like, okay, I'm just going to collect ore. I get it from my table. I get it from my conservatory. I grab it while I'm out in Zereth Mortis. Now I can just sell it and it'll sell consistently, and I will have some gold income from that. So I love it. And also, if I need to buy flasks, they're not going to cost 1,000 gold per flask. So yeah, this is cool. Hopefully this 927 patch will go up like with season roll or
yeah,
shortly thereafter.
I'd imagine. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, this is 9.2.7 is what we're talking about at the moment. All right, there's also going to be a new chat channel added for searching or advertising of services like raiding, dungeons, and PvP activities. And it is going to be trade bracket services bracket is what they're adding. So there's trade chat and then there's trade services. And the goal is the trade channel that's been in game for the last 18 years will continue to exist, but we want to add a new channel to direct messages that request and advertise services like raiding, dungeons, and PvP activities. If you're looking to buy or sell these kind of services, this is the channel for you. If you're not interested in those, you can leave this channel and avoid the noise or move it into its own chat tab. We believe that this is a new distinction. You'll be able to keep trade chat for the traditional buying and selling of items and professions, not other chatter. Yeah, I think this goes along with them saying, hey, if you are advertising services not in the correct channel, that is a, punishable offense. They mentioned this a while ago. And so I think they're better making a distinction as to which channel is the correct channel. And this will also, as they put it, make it so that people who are looking to be like, hey, I have this mount and I want to sell it, and who wants to buy this mount is not mixed in there with the 5 raid teams and 3, PvP people trying to actually spam boosting services and carry services and whatnot that are out there. It'll move all that into its own space, because if you're posting that inside the wrong channel, it's a reminder, it is punishable, which means, hey, don't go using the wrong trade channel for that kind of stuff. It will help to filter that down, I believe, as long as people use them properly. And if they don't, obviously, I hope they get reported and then it gets cleaned up over time. But I think this will make a much quieter trade chat, to be honest, is what this will end up doing. The one channel will be very busy. The services channel will be very busy. And the other one, I think, will be a lot quieter.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too. And I mean, I guess this makes sense. I think it's worth doing stuff like this to try to funnel it. You know, they obviously want to, like, restrict where this stuff goes or where it lives. Like, and they, you know, they have changed the TOS and they've changed all these other things to try to, you know, keep advertisements for services like out of most other places. So, you know, maybe having a place where it belongs and it goes and people know to go there to look for it, maybe that will help keep the noise out of the other places. Like, I guess that's kind of the idea here. So I think it's worth a shot. You know, it's the kind of thing where you have to sort of adapt to how people are using the game and what they're doing with it. And obviously, like, paid services are not going away, you know. So why not have like a way for people to post about it, to find people who are, you know, interested in services one way or the other, and then everybody knows where it belongs. It's worth a shot. Like, I don't see much of a downside here. I don't know if it'll fix the, you know, the issues that people have complained about and that obviously the devs are unhappy with, but you know, at least it's something. It's a place where you can go to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Next is a very weird, it's something I didn't see coming. Okay. The argument for the longest time about Blizzard taking a long time to release stuff has been, well, then why don't they just hire more people to work on the game so they can release stuff faster? Well, guess what? Apparently Blizzard Entertainment now bought Proletariat. It's another development company that did things like Asheron's Call and Lord of the Rings Online and D&D Online. This studio of 100 developers is now part of the World of Warcraft team. They just ate them and are now part of their team. Pretty crazy to see. Proletariat was founded back in 2012, so they've been around for a long time, like I mentioned with those titles. And they are, this is one of those things where when I saw it happen, I was like, wow, I mean, I knew that the WoW development team was hundreds of people, but to add another 100 developers specifically to this, who have previous MMO experience, who are going to be working on something that's not Dragonflight, because clearly Dragonflight is, you know, almost out the door, so they're not going to be just dumping a bunch of new developers into that. They're probably working on whatever is next, which means whatever's next is something they're ramping up to. Like, this is a lot more people. So, I mean, congrats to those from Proletariat, I guess, for becoming Blizzard employees. I hope that works out well for you, and I'm excited to see how this integration happens. It's not going to happen for the next couple of months. I think it takes a few months for them to sort of get everything all paperworked and signed and, you know, people moved and everything, because it's not a work from home. At least it hasn't been a work from home situation for Blizzard developers for a long time. They actually have to go to the facilities and work there. But we will see what ends up happening with this. So this will be interesting.
Yeah, I think Proletariat recently, I think Spellbreak was their recent game, and I guess they're going to be shutting that down as a result. It was like a magic-based battle royale type thing. I never played it, but I heard of it. I don't know. I mean, I guess, you know, I'm not sure. I think they were an independent, they must have been an independent studio, right? And so, I don't know. Maybe the financial realities of operating that game, whatever else they're working on, weren't really coming together. So I would imagine that absorbing 100 employees into the team, it's gonna take a while for them to really get into the pipeline. Although
this is the best window for it, man. Right when they're starting out something new.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine, you know, they have said that, like, Proletariat will be assisting with Dragonflight development, and you know, I mean, obviously a lot of stuff is really far along the pipeline, but also there's going to be ongoing development on it for 2 years, a year and a half, whatever, as patches roll out. So, you know, I guess this is good news. I mean, I guess, if Proletariat was in a situation where they weren't going to be able to sustain themselves, then this is probably just a no-brainer for their employees and stuff to just have a job, right?
Yeah, it'd certainly be a sigh of relief. Yeah, you're joining a company on a title that is not, like, World of Warcraft isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So you're essentially going from like this is our last project, we better hope this works, or we don't know what's going to happen with, job security, whatever, to, no, you're now being hired into a company that has the largest, world online game, massively multiplayer online game that's been around for the longest time. So, yeah. Pretty safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a player, I see this and I go, well, obviously Blizzard is committed to this game. It's not like, they have long-term plans for WoW. Otherwise, they wouldn't be absorbing a studio and 100 people onto the team at one shot, in addition to their normal hiring and stuff. So that's good because I like WoW and I want to keep playing it and I want the game to be healthy and interesting and fun. So, this was a weird story last week, but it sounded like it was something that discussions had sort of started up at the end of last year, and I guess everything just ended up coming together. So, hopefully that leads to a lot of good stuff for WoW, and having some more talent on the team will certainly help cool stuff get made. It's just a question of, how fast can you really absorb that many people and incorporate them into the development process, I guess. So there's no way on the outside for us to know, but I'm just glad that, obviously WoW is a priority for Blizzard and that they want to do what they can to, staff up and have a strong team and keep development on the game consistent. So, you got to wonder how much of this also is just since last July when the DFEH lawsuit came out and everything, and how hard has it been for Blizzard to recruit and retain people to work on World of Warcraft? I'm sure that's a factor as well. Obviously, a lot of people left in the wake of some of the stuff the company was doing and all the bad press and everything like that. And I got to imagine that recruiting into Blizzard has been quite different in the last year or so. So, this might be also a result of that. How do we staff up this team? How do we get some more, skilled developers onto the team? If we can't recruit them one by one, like, maybe working with a studio and absorbing them and bringing them on board is the way to do it. I guess it's pretty weird, but I don't know. I mean, I think for players, this is good news.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think overall for players, it's, as you said, it shows faith in the product. It shows that they want to advance development to get either faster timetables or potentially create larger, broader products, or divide the team up to be able to just do deliverables faster, which would be awesome too. So I don't know where all these developers are going to land, whether they all land in, content, or whether some of them land in tools, or like there's so many different departments that Blizzard has. It'll be interesting to see which one gets the biggest reinforcement and how that all sort of pans out over time. It's just, I don't know, it's exciting for the developers, like you said, for job security, and I think it's exciting for players to see what this brings with maybe later Dragonflight, but also, the expansion afterwards, what that ends up looking like with a much larger team that's been bolstered by all these new people and new faces. Okay. Priest talent tree preview for Dragonflight. If you play a priest and you're interested about your talent tree, that's out there now. Basically, they I don't know why they chose priest, but they chose to do another talent tree preview. If that's something you want to go check out, it's out there. I'm not going to review and break down the stuff. I will say that the fact that one of the things included in the tree is PI, as in Power Infusion, has raised a lot of chat and talk on the internet, because it's probably one of the most hotly discussed abilities in the game, around the fact that it really changes the dynamic of a lot of people's DPS profiles, meaning that it can take a character who might not perform very well in raid and suddenly make them the best character in raid, just because of how the haste works and how the haste affects the class. So it's certainly something that raises a lot of eyebrows when we see it coming back right now in the plan for Dragonflight, but we'll have to wait and see if that goes live as is, or if they choose to replace Power Infusion with something else, because that'll be interesting. But if you are a Priest, you want to check this out, it's in the show notes, and obviously Wowhead will have a talent calculator. I'm sure they probably already do have a talent calculator for it.
I was kind of surprised that we got another one of these in like a one-off for one class. Like, we gotta have Alpha soon, right? I guess that doesn't necessarily mean we have all the classes as soon as Alpha goes up or whatever, but this seems like a lot of work to write this out and get it approved and then localize it in however many different languages they publish it in. You know, for one class for this close to Alpha going out, like, nobody's going to care about these blog posts once the public testing is available. So I thought it was weird that this came out last week.
With a smaller studio, I would have gone, oh, maybe this is someone's, like, they play Priest, they wanted to put something together because, you know, there's like a pet project kind of thing. But you're right, when they have to localize all these posts and have them all translated to different languages and etc., like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, this was a plan. They intended to do this. There was a decision made at the top to release another one. For whatever reason, they chose Priest. I can't speak to that, but that was what it was. It was like that is a company-based decision. That is not like one developer took it upon themselves to accomplish this thing, because of the fact that releasing any kind of official blog post means you're releasing it in so many languages. That is part of it for sure. Okay. But yes, if you want to check it out, check it out. I'm with you. I'm surprised we saw it. I do wonder whether this is hinting at, like you said, oh, there's going to be only certain classes available inside Alpha to play, or maybe those certain classes are the only ones that actually have the new talent trees, and the other ones don't, until they actually put out updates. I don't know. If they're that far behind, though, I also question their release schedule, because it means if they don't have talent trees worked out for all the classes by this point, then I'm super questionable as to how far along they are for completing this product. I can't picture them doing the, like, would they do like a 6-month beta for Pandaria, because they guaranteed everyone beta, and just not having talent trees, or like being like, yeah, we don't have talents yet for pandas. You can play one, but they don't have any abilities. You'd be like, what? Like, we're 6 months away. What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of questions that will be answered once we have a public test.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. There is a neat thing we wanted to mention here. We haven't been talking a lot about AWC and MDI as it's been going on lately. But yes, the global finals are coming up. And there's a special title that you can earn, and it's the Fearless Spectator title. Basically, viewers will have a chance to earn the new Fearless Spectator title while watching the upcoming global finals for AWC and MDI. Basically, esports is something they've always wanted to support, but on July 8th, the action will begin. The top 8 MDI teams from around the world will compete to win their share of $300,000 prize pool, which is US dollars, which matters because I'm a Canadian and people live in other countries too. So $300,000 is a much different sum of money. And Shadowlands 2022 Global Champion is what they're going to be given the title for the MDI champion. So that's going to be cool. But this Fearless Spectator title is something you can earn by watching it. So we wanted to highlight it because it's coming up. MDI finals are the 8th to 10th of July. AWC finals are the 16th to 17th of July. And the cross-region tournament for AWC is going to be July 23rd to 24th. So basically, every weekend in July, we have something going on up until the end of it. The last weekend, there isn't something going on, but there'll be something going on for, this coming weekend, weekend after that. Tune in and watch. Basically, you're going to be eligible on the YouTube gaming channels. If you watch for a total of 2 hours, you'll receive the title. I like this because it's happening over 3 different weekends, which means if in the first weekend I somehow don't get the title because they mess something up, I have 2 more chances where they might have fixed something for me to be able to earn this. So there's going to be, I'm sure, details that they'll release around the actual weekend when this is coming up this coming weekend about connecting your account, because they do actually have a little connecting your account thing in here, but I'm sure they'll reiterate that to everybody. So basically, before you receive the rewards, you have to link your YouTube and BlizzardBattle.net accounts, and you basically, they say you log into YouTube, you navigate to your account sharing under connected apps, you connect Battle.net, you follow the simple prompts to finish your account connections, and then when connecting accounts, you have to be sure that you're currently logged into the Blizzard account that you want to receive drops on. So I've done this because I received the Hearthstone drops. I've been receiving them for a while. So if you've already been watching Hearthstone or another esport on YouTube and been receiving drops from that, then you're probably fine for this. You can check it to make sure, but you're probably already fine to receive this. And yeah, drops are becoming a very big thing. And I could certainly discuss for quite a while the actual business benefit of doing it, of how many people are actually watching your content versus just opening it and giving you a viewer while they go AFK for 2 hours and earn their reward. But it's a cool thing that I'm glad they're doing. I'm glad they're branching out more with drops. It was neat to see the other thing that happened this past week is all those helms. All the helms from the store for World of Warcraft went up as Twitch Prime drops. So basically, if you were someone who has Twitch Prime and you hadn't purchased the helms inside game yet for World of Warcraft, the 3 different helms from the store, they are now available. If you just have Twitch Prime and go and link your Battle.net account, you can just get those helms over time, which is another big thing that they're doing. So I'm glad to see a lot more of this branching out to what I would call the more, new culture, the young culture of how this kind of promotion works. I could certainly debate its value, but I think it's cool to see. So I'm glad they're doing it. Either way, check out the MDI Finals, AWC Finals. There's going to be a bunch of channels for English, French, German, Korean, Russian, and Spanish. So depending on what language you want, you'll be able to watch any of those. They should all be eligible because they've listed them as eligible channels. And be sure you're getting your Fearless Spectator title. That'd be a kind of a cool one.
Yeah, cool promotion. I mean, it's a unique reward, which is, I think, the number one reason to highlight it. I think it's kind of a funny title, Fearless Spectator. Like you're spectating. I mean, how much fear is really involved there? But still, I think with the previous one they never brought that title back. I can't remember what it was, but they did a similar thing with the title before. And it's just, this is like a unique thing. So you might as well check it out. I mean, MDI is kind of interesting. AWC is kind of, the cross-region tournament, I think especially will be cool for AWC. And you get a lot of chances here to check it out on YouTube and watch 2 hours. And I'll be this is this Friday. It's MDI starts, so yeah. I'll throw that on my second monitor while I'm doing other stuff, and there you go.
Reward.
Yeah, it's cool. I like when they do unique stuff for it. And it's not just like, oh, you get I don't know what they would even give you in WoW that wouldn't be unique, but like you get card packs in Hearthstone, right? For watching esports usually, but there's really nothing comparable to that in WoW, so I guess it would have to be something kind of unique. I guess they could recycle like a pet or something, but yeah, I like when they do this kind of stuff, so definitely check that out over the next couple weeks.
I mean, I think banners were always the cool thing, the like flags that fly behind your character. Yeah. That to me was always a neat thing for cheering on esports. I think a title's cool. It's certainly a unique thing, but I do feel like those cosmetic toys that attach things to your character to sort of cheer on MDI or cheer on whatever, that was neat. They give you out tabards. I think we had tabards at the Australian MDI thing. I can't remember, but I feel like there was something like that. But anyways, the other thing I want to mention about this, which before it was totally slipping my mind, which it currently still is again, as far as MDI stuff goes, I whenever I watch Hearthstone esports, I'm always the best weekends for me to watch, and the ones I'm always most excited to watch are the ones where there's a really new meta. Where they're like, oh, we just did this new thing, and guess what? There's a tournament this weekend, so players only have 4 days to react, and it's way more interesting to watch. I feel like MDI could benefit from something like that and go, yeah, here's the Season 4 dungeons. Here you go. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, because it will be like a last gasp at the Shadowlands dungeons, and it would be, watching...
It would be way more interesting to watch, to be like, yeah, you know what? You guys, we just announced this today, and it's coming up this weekend, and you now have 4 days to prepare for Karazhan Upper Lower and Mechagon and like go. Like just, let's see how people do, right? That would be way more entertaining to me for this weekend to watch and see how they adapted and see how they adjusted with limited time to sort of figure it out than what MDI Global Finals are going to be, which is you've had months to practice this and it's all old hat for you. And can you actually do the thing that you did last weekend, basically, last time we watched you, with slightly different affixes like that. It's less entertaining to me than going, we're going to spring this on you. It's going to be a surprise, and this is what we're doing. I think that would be far more interesting to see how these incredibly talented and skilled players who are very unique thinkers, who are very unique problem solvers, come up with solutions to these problems. That's what I would want to see. So I'm just putting it out there. Yeah, Blizzard people listening, I think you could mix it up a bit here.
It would be a way more interesting as a spectator to kind of get a preview of what Season 4 is going to look like. I mean, because that's what we're going to be playing for the next few months. You know, all the Shadowlands dungeons except for Tazavesh are rotating out, so we won't be doing those anymore at all.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. As far as hotfixes go, last but not least in this this chat that we have today, basically they fixed an issue that caused auto shot to be cast when targeting a Sepulchre of the First One's boss with left mouse button after being resurrected. Yeah, they identified what it was. There's the fix.
I think. I don't know. I haven't heard anybody complaining about this since last Tuesday night when this went in, but I don't know. It may or may not be fixed. Who knows?
Based on the specificity, I think they fixed it, because for them to go, they fixed auto shot being cast when targeting a boss inside this particular raid with this particular mouse button after being resurrected. I feel like they're like, okay, we have specifically identified exactly what this issue is. So yes, I do hope that it is fixed. That would be great. The Tangle Dreamweaver mount, that's the mount that you got if you pre-ordered Dragonflight at the proper Epic or whatever it was purchased. Then it now has an animation when taking flight. So they apparently had an animation and it wasn't working, and now it's fixed. So you now have an animation for that, as opposed to the dragon just kind of lifting off the ground on 4 legs, which would be really weird. And they fixed an issue where if a player was invited to a cross-faction party while in a PvP match, they would become hostile to their teammates. That was one of the things that I had talked about when cross-faction just went live, where essentially people were queuing into PvP, and they were a Horde player and Alliance player queuing together, and they could essentially fight each other if they wanted to on the same team, which was very awkward and weird. So yeah, that got fixed too. So yeah. Overall, huge amount of notes for this week, but I'm glad we got through them, and I think there's some pretty exciting stuff in there. So we're going to play a quick sounder for our patrons, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Celian, Infark, Kapawi, Mibble the Mighty, Nick, and Shorel. Thank you. This sounder is for you. That's right. We have a Patreon over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. If you want to check that out and support the show, feel free to. It helps pay for all sorts of services for our show, including hosting and posting and backups and storage and, you know, all the expenses that go along with that, technology. So we always appreciate our patrons, and we like to do things like our patron call-in show /Q&A episode. And we haven't scheduled one yet for July, but that will happen soon. No new patrons to announce today, but just a big thank you and shout out to all of our patrons. We appreciate you. Thank you. And we will look forward to chatting to you more inside of our Discord and everything else.
Yep. Man, hopefully we'll have some alpha stuff to talk about by the time we do the July show. We're just going to keep putting that out into the universe, and I'm sure that it will return to us in some way.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a review this week. If you haven't left us a 5-star review yet, consider heading over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star. They really help out our show. They boost us up those Apple charts and help more people find our show. This one comes in from Boron Master, entitled "Great Show." Says, well-balanced show that has something for all Warcrafters. Well, thank you so much, Boron Master. I appreciate your name. That's a great name. And I hope you continue to master the Boron.
Yeah, and thanks for writing in. It's nice to hear. We do try to include stuff for all levels of play and all perspectives as best we can. I mean, we can only really speak to our own perspectives, but we do. Like last week, we talked about Classic a whole lot. We didn't really play that, but it was what was in the news and it was what was on people's minds and relevant to people that pay the money to play the game. So, you know, this week is all about kind of stuff that's coming up very soon in retail or right around the corner, we hope, or whatever. So, you know, that's I think it is something we do try to include is that kind of balance in terms of what's notable around the game.
Yeah, having played at all different levels of WoW, I really try and remain as grounded as possible by connecting with the people who I played with at those levels of play, to keep me from becoming that person who has blinders on for only what I'm doing right now. And I know we got we've gotten a lot of really nice emails to the show, and I always appreciate the emails that come in. And one of the ones that was written a few weeks back was just recognizing the, appreciation for the fact that a lot of Mythic Raiders, when they vocalize their opinions, tend to vocalize them with blinders on, or with an opinion that only reflects their play and those who play adjacent to them, as opposed to, the whole spectrum that exists. And I've played in the, one night a week, we clear normal and a couple of heroic bosses teams. And I've played all the way up into the, US or World 38, rating Mythic teams. And as long as I keep touching base with people across the spectrum, I can seem to keep myself reasonably grounded. And so, yeah, when a change happens to the game, I try my best. As Jason sort of mentions, we can only really try our best at this, but we try our best at maintaining a perspective that is a broad perspective at the game, and talking about how it affects the Mythic rating scene and the people directly around who I play, but also how this might be beneficial or positive for other players inside of the rating scene or the game in general. So yeah, it's the current hot topic floating around the community right now is something, Jason, that I don't know if you're aware of, but is very close to both of our hearts, which is Shadowlands needed AP because people needed more motivation to log in regularly and to feel like logging in regularly granted them some sort of character power / motivation to do so. And people are going back and forth as to whether or not this is actually something the expansion had needed or not. And I know we will never forget me and you sitting next to each other at BlizzCon when they announced no AP in Shadowlands and the entire place erupted with cheering, and Jason and I just looked at each other like, uh-oh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Anima was sort of like the substitute for that, except it was such an unfulfilling currency, and I think there was probably stuff they could have done with Anima that would have felt better to have. But, that's all ancient history at this point, right? It was what it was, and that's kind of the end of it. I'm kind of torn. I think that there are ways that you can, obviously, I think people remember, what they didn't like about, maybe 8.0 artifact power, right? Where it just felt so punishing because it locked you out of stuff you needed. It was a real barrier. But I think there's ways you can do it that feel good and that feel like they're worth doing. So I don't know. That's a tough one. I also feel like Zereth Mortis is a pretty good model of how to do outdoor endgame content that feels rewarding without having that number to make go up too. So I think there's potential ways to do it that either would involve something like AP or not, but where we ended up at, especially in 9.0 outdoor endgame, man, that was I did that grind and out in the maw every day getting Stygia and getting my sockets, and it wasn't great. I would have much rather been collecting AP and watching the number go up. But then again, I think Zereth Mortis is one of the best zones that they've done for, endgame outdoor stuff. And if that's going to be the model, if they learn some lessons from that, then I think there's a lot of different ways to present players with something engaging and interesting and fun and rewarding. And sometimes they get it right and sometimes they don't. But the beginning of this expansion for sure felt really bad in that regard.
Yeah. Last bit of news, actually, that since you mentioned Classic and us talking about Classic last week, I wanted to fit in is since our episode last week where we talked about how Season of Mastery characters are just going to be deleted, basically, at the end of the season, that was just what it was created for and that's all it is, Blizzard has actually announced today that there's going to be a way towards the end of Season of Mastery to actually transfer your characters to either a Classic era or a Wrath of the Lich King Classic realm. From the Season of Mastery realm. So if you're somebody who did want to take part in Season of Mastery or has been, your character's not just getting deleted like we initially thought was going to happen based off of all the language that they'd used up to this point. They've decided to allow players to transfer those characters over to the newer realms, which obviously you'll lose all the benefits of Season of Mastery, but at least your character continues on and you can do something new with that. So if you want to level up a character really quickly, hop on Season of Mastery, power through a character really quickly, and then jump into Wrath,
I mean, that's awesome news because, like, those realms are just getting shut off, and people have time invested in those characters. Yeah, if you want to play them on a classic era realm or Wrath or whatever, like I think that's good because it respects people's time investment a lot better. I mean, obviously, the whole point of Season of Mastery is like a limited time experience, and it was going to go away. So I think that's fine to do that, but yeah, let people preserve the time investment in the character in a different context.
Yeah, exactly. All right, folks, with that, we're going to wrap up episode 528 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter, or you can join our Discord. If just go to thestartingzone.com/Discord. There's a link there that will take you to our Discord channel, and you can hop in there and join the conversation over there. If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. Check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and all that kind of fun stuff. And I know a few people bought stuff during the last sale, so thank you very much. We appreciate that, and I hope you enjoy your gear. It's certainly very soft and comfortable stuff, so I imagine you will, which is great. Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
The best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, and you can also find me streaming WoW on twitch.tv/Shieldwald. I've been off stream for like a month now. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll come back this week. I don't know. But streams are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Sundays usually. The question is, do I start back up at the tail end of Season 3 here, or just wait for Season Roll to start streaming consistently again? And I'm not exactly sure. But check out the channel over there, and I'll be back to it maybe as soon as tonight. Maybe not. I'm non-committal right now.
Oh, yeah. My plan is to be back tonight. You can find me over at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. We had the 3 weeks off from raiding. We're back to raiding. There'll probably be some time where I'm kind of sitting out just chatting with chat, because obviously we want to rotate people through and make sure the most people get to experience raid that they can. And with trials, that means that our roster is a bit higher. So I'm sure it'll be one of those, like, I'm in for 3 bosses, I'm out for a boss, I'm in for these bosses, I'm out for a boss, I'm in for the... I imagine I'll be in for at least a couple of bosses up front, probably DPSing as opposed to healing, and then healing those last 3. I imagine Dreadlords, Rygalon, Jailer are for sure, probably even Anduin. I'll probably be in for healing those bosses, because I don't think they'll want to mess with our comp too much until we've actually felt what all these changes have felt like since we killed these bosses. Keeping in mind that, like, we killed Rygalon, I think 5 weeks ago, something like that. It's been a little while, so this will be our first time back doing a re-clear since all of these changes took place. We killed almost everything before any major nerfs came through. So that means that all of these fights are going to feel very different to a lot of our raid team, and there's going to be some relearning that happens, and there's going to be some, wow, that's a lot easier that happens. So that's over at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. I should be running that tonight. And if you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Spencer_Downey over there on Twitter. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and job's done.